So good morning. Welcome to our California test prep group here on Facebook. I'm Dr. Christy Mulkey, if you don't know who I am, and I'm the workshop coordinator for 240 Tutoring. And I'm here with you this morning live to do a little bit of work on CBEST Math. Now, we've been doing this for a couple of weeks. So every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock Central Time, so a little bit earlier in California, I'm here live to work through some practice questions and go through some competencies and standards and help you to prepare for that CBEST exam. We're going to be moving to other subjects in the future, but right now we're working through math. So today we're going to be looking at skill factor 3. If you haven't seen our other videos, I'd highly suggest you go check those out. They're right here in our Facebook group. They're also on YouTube. So if you'd like to check them out there, you certainly can. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to share my screen with you so we can jump right in and do some practice problems this morning. So just sharing my screen. And get that PowerPoint started. All right, so again, today we're looking at the CBEST Math, and this is skill factor 3. Now we're actually going to do two videos, two parts to this skill because there is a lot involved, and this is looking at numerical and graphic relationships. Now, if at any point in this video you have a question, a comment, just drop it right here in the comments. If you just want to say hi, good morning, feel free to do that. If we're experiencing any technical problems, you can't see or hear me, or something's unclear, just drop a comment. I've got a device here where I'm watching those, so I'll try to answer those as we go along. So we're going to jump right in. Again, this is specific to your test, and we're going to work on some strategies and some practice problems. And we have more videos like this. Just go check them out here on our page or on YouTube. Now, today we are looking at, again, that graphic and numeric relationships. So this is skill factor 3 in your standards. Today, we're going to look at these specific skills up here, these first 5. So we're looking at relationships in numerical data. We're looking at positions of numbers in relation to each other, using greater than, less than, or equal to describe relationships, identifying numbers, formulas, and expressions that are equivalent, and then using rounding rules to solve problems. This is probably the easier portion of this skill factor. Next week, we're going to look at these bottom 3 skills, and this is where it gets a little more complicated. But today, the things we're working on today should be the easier portions of this test, and I'm going to show you some strategies to even help you move more quickly through these types of problems. So let's jump right in. All of the questions we're looking at today are the free and public questions provided on the CTC exams website. So if you haven't seen those before, I highly recommend you go check that out. That's where I'm getting all this information. So your competencies, your standards, and all these practice problems. Now, one thing they give you is they give you the practice problems and they give you the answer, but they don't give you an explanation. So that's what we're going to do today. So if you don't know how to solve these, I'm going to help you with that. So let's look at this first one. This is number 35, and we're looking at percentages. It says a school district is proposing a 5% increase in the number of days in a school year. Currently, there are 180 days in the school year. How long would a school year be with the proposed increase? So the first thing we need to figure out is, what is that 5% increase? So we need to know, what's 5% of 180? Now, first of all, I want to explain how percents and decimals are related. So if we're looking at 100%, and since you don't have a calculator on this test, you can't just put in 180 times 5 and hit the percent button. You actually have to know how to change this into a decimal. All right, so we're going to change this percent into a decimal. Now, if your calculator happens to have that percent sign, this is still very easy to do without it. In fact, I'm going to teach you some mental math that'll help you the next time you're shopping at a store and you see a sale advertisement. So when we're looking at 100%, we're looking at 1 whole. So we basically want to change this to 1 whole. And to do that, I'm going to move this decimal over to the left 2 places. So that changes it into one whole number. All right. So whenever we're dealing with percentages, to change it to a decimal, you're always going to move that decimal 2 places to the left, 2 places to the left. So if I'm looking at 5% and I want to change that to a decimal, right now the decimal's right here behind the 5. I'm going to move it 2 places to the left. Now I can't just leave that place blank. I'm going to have to put a 0 there. So 5% becomes 0.05. All right. Now the next thing we do is we take that 180 and we multiply it by 0.05 to figure out what is 5% of 180. So some simple math here. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 8 is 40. Put down the 0, regroup the 4. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9. Now, if you don't know this trick, whenever you're multiplying and you're dealing with decimals, however many decimals you have up here in your problem, how many decimal places, is how many decimal places you're going to need in your answer. So I see 2 numbers behind the decimal, so I'm going to have to move that decimal over 2 places. So $9, or 9, not dollars, 9 would be 5% of 180. So we're going to increase that school day by 5%, or 9 days. All right. So the school year started at 180. We're adding a 5% increase. Increase means add. So we're going to add 9 to that. You're probably quickly already seeing the answer is 189. This one goes really quickly. Now, I want to show you some mental math to make this go even faster. Y'all, this is a trick I've taught my daughters. I use this when we're shopping, especially when we're shopping a sale. I always try to work with 10% because 10% are easy. Remember when we said 100% move the decimal 2 places? All right. So when we want to take 10% of a number, we're basically, so if we did 180 times 0.10, because that 10% would be 0.10. If you multiply this out, well, we could actually eliminate this 0 and do 180. Promise I'm going to show you how to do this in your head, times 0.1, because that 0 on the end didn't even need it. Look at this. 1 times 0, 1 times 8, 1 times 1, 1 decimal place. Anytime we're finding 10%, we're just going to move that decimal place over 1 spot. So if I have 180 and I want to find 10%, I can take 180, move the decimal over, and I get 18. But you're thinking, this is asking me for 5%. Well, what's half of 10? 5. So if 10% is 18, half of 18 would be 5%. Half of 18 is 9. Y'all, I did this all mentally in my head in a matter of about 15 seconds with that strategy. 10% of 180 would be 18. So 5% would be half of that. Half of 18 is 9. Add 9 to 180. Correct answer is 189. This is my shopping strategy. When my child will go, well, this is 30% off. What's 30% of 48 bucks? Well, let's find 10%. And then we can multiply that by 4 and quickly see what 40 or 30% is, or what 50% is. So it makes it real easy when you work with that 10%. So certainly you can do the math to figure this one out, but trying to teach you some mental math strategies to make some of these problems go more quickly. All right, let's look at the next one. We're looking at number 36. Remember, again, if I'm moving too fast, just drop a comment and I'll slow down. This one is using symbols to express numerical relationships, so greater than, less than, or equal to. And it says, which of the following mathematical standard statements is correct? Statements is correct. Now, this looks overwhelming. Lots of fractions to look at. Guys, let me show you a trick. I'm just going to start with the whole numbers. I'm not even going to worry about the fractions yet. I'm just going to look at the whole numbers and see which ones of these can be correct. So this is saying 3 is less than 3. Well, that could be correct depending on the fraction. So I'm going to keep going. This says 3 is less than 2. Well, we know 3 is not less than 2. It doesn't matter what the fractions are. So A can't be correct. Let's look at this one. 3 is greater than 2. 2 is greater than 3. Well, we know 2 is not greater than 3, so B cannot be correct. Notice I'm not even looking at the fractions yet, making this go really quickly. Looking at the whole numbers, 3 is greater than 2. 2 is greater than 3. 2 cannot be greater than 3, so C cannot be correct. 3 is greater than 3. Well, that could be depending on the fractions. 3 is greater than 2. So far, that one could be correct. 3 is less than 3. Well, it could be depending on what these fractions are. And 3 is less than 2. Well, 3 can't be less than 2. So E is not correct. Y'all, D is the correct answer without comparing a single fraction. You can just compare the whole numbers. None of these fractions are improper, which would make the whole number change. So this is really straightforward. You don't even have to deal with the fractions. The only one that can be correct is D, based on the whole numbers. Now we can double check those fractions. 2/3, since all the denominators are 3, it makes it real easy to compare the fractions. 2 is greater than 1, so that fraction checks out. And since this whole number is greater than this whole number, those fractions don't matter. So D is correct. That one should go really quickly if you just look at the whole numbers. Now this one, we don't have any whole numbers to look at. We're forced to look at the fractions. So this is number 37. It says use the mathematical statement below to answer the question that follows. 2/6 is greater than a missing variable, and that is less than 6/8. So we're looking for something that's between 2/6 and 6/8. All right, it's got to be greater than 2/6, less than 6/8. And it says, which of the following values, when entered in the box, will satisfy the statement above? Now, I'm going to show you some things I noticed right off the bat. These answer choices are all simplified to their lowest form. 1/4, I can't simplify that fraction. 1/3, 1/2, 3/4, even 9/10 is simplified as low as it can go. If I look at my statement up here, these are not simplified. So the first thing I'm going to do is simplify these fractions as low as I can get them. So I'm going to rewrite these. 2/6. What, if you don't know how to simplify a fraction, it's real easy. What number can I divide both the numerator and the denominator by equally? Well, in this case, I can divide the top and the bottom by 2. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 2/6 becomes 1/3. I'm going to do the same with 6/8. I'm going to simplify that fraction. So I think, what can I divide the numerator and the denominator by, both, and get an equal number? So I can divide both of these, give you a second, by 2. They're both even numbers, so that tells you can divide them both by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we've got that fraction simplified. 6/8 becomes 3/4. So we're looking for something that is greater than 1/3, but less than 3/4. All right. Now, we know we can't compare fractions with different denominators or unlike denominators. So the first thing we're going to have to do is get a like denominator for all of these. Now, I'm going to tell you something I did. I'm looking at 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 4, and 10. Now, here's what I did to save myself some time is I ignored 9/10 for a minute. Because when I throw this in and try to get a common denominator, I'm going to get a really large common denominator. I'm going to get a large number to work with. So what I did here was I just worked with all these small ones. And if none of these work, I'll know this one's the answer. If one of these works, I'll know this one is not. So I just worked with easy numbers to work with. So I already had 1/3, which was actually 2/6. I'm going to put that up here so we don't forget. And then I have 3/4, which was actually 6/8. So we don't forget those. All right. And then I have 1/4, 1/3, 1/2, 3/4. Now, some of you are like, there's 2 1/3s in there. Well, notice, are either of these signs equals? Nope. got to be less than or greater than. So we can actually rule out any that are the same. So I can take 1/3 out of the equation and 3/4. I don't have to deal with those. So I'm going to cross those out. 1/3 and 3/4. All right, did I cross out the right ones? The screen is really small. Yes, okay. So now I'm going to find a common denominator for all of these fractions. And if I'm looking at 3, 4, and 2, the common denominator here is going to be 12. What's the least common multiple of all of these? 3, 6, 9, 12, 4, 8, 12, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. That's the first one they all have in common. So I'm going to change these all to 12ths. And the way you do that, 3 times 4 is 12. So I multiply my numerator times that, times 1 times 4 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. So I'm going to multiply my numerator that times that. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 3 is 12. So I multiply my numerator times that. 1 times 3 is 3. All right, and then I have 2 times 6 is 12. 1 times 6 is 6. All right, now I can compare all of these fractions. So I'm looking for something that is greater than 4/12, but less than 9/12. Well, 3 is not greater than 4/12. 6 is greater than 4/12, and it's less than 9/12. So this is my correct answer. 1/2 is correct, not 1/4. So we can cross that one out. Now, I don't even have to worry about this 9/10. Now, if it's really bugging you, you can go check that 9/10, and you'd have to work with a large common denominator, but we already know right here that fits. So making the math a little bit faster, okay? A little bit faster. All righty, we're going to move on to the next one. This one is just, do you have some basic understanding of math principles here? So it says, which of the following expressions is equivalent to BH divided by 2? BH divided by 2. Now, hopefully, you know when we see 2 letters next to each other or a number and a letter next to each other, it's implying multiplication. I could put that dot there, or I could even rewrite this to say B times H divided by 2. So when we have 2 letters next to each other, it implies multiplication. So I know I'm multiplying B times H, and I'm dividing by 2. Y'all, this one's really simple. We know if we're dividing something by 2, we're dividing it into 2 equal parts. Anybody with me? You're splitting it in half. So if we are ever dividing by 2, so you see this or you see dividing by 2, we are essentially multiplying by 1/2. All right? Because we could actually take this BH, multiply it together, and put it over 1. And when we multiply by 1/2, we get BH times 1 would be BH. 1 times 2 would be 2. So when we multiply by half, we see we're still right back to dividing by 2. So the answer here should be quickly, easy to determine. It is D, 1/2 of B times H. 1/2 of B times H. So that one's just, do you understand some basic math principles? All righty. We're going to move on to number 40. This is positions of numbers. So we're comparing with place value. It says if the value of X is between 0.0051 and 0.038, which of the following could be X? Now, the way I do this is all about lining up the decimal, is I draw a very quick, simple place value chart so I don't get confused. I know X has to be between those 2 numbers. So I'm going to draw a place value chart. All right, and I'm going to put my decimal right here. This would be my ones place. This would be my tenths place, and so on and so on and so on. Now I'm actually going to make these lines a little bit longer so we can work with this a little bit. Should have done that to start with. All right, and I'm going to fill in these numbers. Now to make this a little bit easier to see, I'm going to change my pen color real quick. And I'm going to plug in these first two numbers. So the first one I have is 0.0051. Then I'm going to plug in that second number. I'm going to put in the decimal, and I have a 0 in front, and then behind it I have 038. Now at first glance, it might look like that 51 is the larger of the two numbers. It is not, because that 5 is way back here in the thousandths place, and we have to compare left to right. So this 3 is greater than this 0, so that makes this the greater number, and this is the less number. So we need X to be in between those. So we need it to be less than this one, but greater than this one. So it's got to be in between those, okay? So X is going to be less than 0.038, and it will be greater than 0.0051. All right, now let's just plug in these answer choices. And I'm going to change my pen color again just to make this real easy to see. Let's go green. So I'm going to plug in each of these numbers. I'm going to start with my decimal. I've got 0, and then I've got 2 zeros behind it, 4, 2. Okay, so I can see this is less than this 0.038, but it has to be greater than, I'm going to cross these out so it's less confusing. It's got to be greater than this number, and 5 is greater than 2, so this one will, or 5 is greater than 4, that one will not work. So I'm going to cross that one out. I'm going to plug in the next one, and I'm going pretty slowly, but guys, you can move through this. You'd be surprised how fast you can move through this. All right, 2 is less than 3, and it's greater than this number because it has something in this hundredths place, so this could be the answer. Let's go ahead and check the other ones. 0 got kind of small on me. That 4 is greater than that 3, and we're looking for something less than that 3, so that cannot be the answer. And I'm going to run out of space. 0.052. That 5 is also greater than that 3, so that cannot be the answer. And then we have 0.06. That 6 is greater than that 3, so that cannot be the answer. Our correct answer here is B. So this is all about lining up the decimals. All about lining up the decimals. As soon as you get those in a place value chart, it becomes real easy to see which number would fall between these two numbers. Okay, this one's an easy one to make a silly mistake on, but it doesn't require great math skill or knowledge. All right, last one. Using rounding to problem solve. I'm gonna check and see if we have any questions. No, nothing so far. It says Carrie ran the same distance in 4 different races. Her times were 18.04 seconds, 21.39 seconds, 12.99 seconds, and 14.14 seconds. If the individual times are rounded to the nearest 1/10 of a second, what is the estimate of Carrie's total time for all 4 races? Now I'm going to change my pen color back because that green was a little bit hard to read. All right. So it said, what is the estimate? Estimate should tell you I can round. Yay. Rounding makes life easier. All right. It's supposed to make life easier. And in this particular instance, they tell you where to round to. It says rounded to the nearest 1/10 of a second. All right, so if we're looking at place value, we've got our ones place, decimal, tenths, then hundredths. So we're rounding to that place right after the decimal. Okay, so not in every problem are they going to tell you where to round to. Okay, but in this one, they tell you we're going to round to the tenths place. So let's go ahead and round each of those. So we had 18.04. And if we round that to the tenths place, we look at the digit behind it. If it's less than 5, it stays the same. If it's more than 5, we increase it by 1. So if this digit were 5 through 9, we would increase this. Since it's less than 5, we're going to leave that 0 the same. And this becomes 18.0. I'm going to take the next one, 21.39, and we're going to round that to the nearest tenth. All right, so we're looking at the place behind there. We have a 9 that is greater than 5, so we increase this by 1. 3 will become 4, and so we have 21.4. Then I'm going to look at 12.99. Again, we're rounding to that tenths place. 9 is greater than 5, so we increase this by 1. You might be thinking, oh, if we increase this by 1, it becomes 10. Do not put a 1 right here and a 0 right here. That's not correct. This will become a 0, and that 1 gets regrouped. If I have 10 tenths, I have a whole number. So that 12 becomes 13. Then I have 14.14. And we're going to see what that becomes. We're going to round that to the tenths place. Look right behind it. 4 is less than 5, so this 1 stays the same. And we have 14.1. And it says, what is the best estimate for the total time of all 4 races? Now we just add these up. Bring that decimal straight down and add. 4 and 1 is 5. I have 4 and 3 is 7, plus 1 is 8. 8 and 8 is 16. I hope you see how I group those numbers there to make the math go a little bit faster. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we get 66.5. The correct answer is B. So pretty straightforward, should be easy. The only thing that could have tripped you up was rounding that 12.99. We round it to the nearest tenths. We're actually going to get 13. So hopefully that has helped you. Now I want to do a few reminders. Remember before you take this test that there is no calculator. It's really helpful if you know your basic facts. That way simple math moves quickly. The simple math should move quickly. And maybe then you can even do some of it mentally with some of the tricks I showed you today. Practice if you're not proficient with your basic facts. Download some apps to your phone and practice those basic facts. There's lots of them. As you saw today, reading carefully is key. So be sure on these simple problems that you read carefully so you don't make a silly mistake. Y'all, the first part of this skill is actually pretty easy. These should be the problems you get right, and you get right quickly. All right. So always familiarize yourself. If you're about to take this test, I highly suggest you go online and do the little tutorial so you can see what the online test looks like. Be sure when you're practicing math that you're not just practicing the math, you're practicing your pacing, that you're not taking forever on one problem. All right. Next week, we'll be looking at skill factor 3, but those last 3 little skills within there. All right. So those last 3 little standards. So I hope this has been helpful. If you would like more information, I highly suggest you look at our study guides. They have videos, they have reading material, they have flashcards, practice quizzes. There's a free diagnostic test in there that will help you really prepare for this test. You can also check out all of our free resources at 240tutoring.com/resources. Again, these videos are all right here in our Facebook group. If you want to scroll through the feed, you can find them that way, or you can click on the videos link over on the left-hand side of your screen, or you can find us in our CTC study and test prep group on YouTube. There's a whole playlist for this group with all of these live videos. I hope you have found this helpful. I don't see any comments that need addressing. If you are watching this later, not live, and you want me to answer a question, feel free to comment. I actually do live office hours in this group tomorrow morning, so every Wednesday morning. And if I see some comments that were posted after the live video ended, I will certainly go in there and try to answer those as best I can. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope you do well in your preparation for your test, and I will see you next week. Join us for the last part of CBEST Math. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Dr. Christy Mulkey with 240 Tutoring.